I figured I would get started with, I guess, the most interesting news, which is a follow up of a story I've been covering for weeks and weeks now, which is that Ryan Walters, Oklahoma superintendent of public instruction and like the biggest Christian nationalist in the country, he has been sued. He's been sued by a whole bunch of church state separation organizations, all of whom are trying to stop him from wasting $3 million to buy Trump Bibles for teachers across the state. And I've made so many videos about Ryan Walters and this specific project, so I'm not going to rehash every single thing, but I did want to go over the highlights before I tell you what this lawsuit entails because it's too amusing. So, in case you need a recap of what Walters has been trying to do, this is a project he's been working on since over the summer because back in June, he issued a memo basically demanding that every public school teacher in the state of Oklahoma incorporate the Bible in their curriculum. And he said it was in order to teach our kids about the history of this country. Because if you want to learn about the history of the United States, you have to read the Bible, since that's where George Washington wrote his diaries or something. I don't know. It doesn't make sense. He also said in that memo, adherence to this mandate is compulsory. And he said that immediate and strict compliance is expected. And everyone saw that memo and they're like, first of all, it's the summer. What the hell do you want us to do? But two, like, what happens if we don't comply? Like, there's nothing in the memo that says what punishment is going to come upon us. Also, you, Ryan Walters, don't get to make the rules about that sort of thing. It's a local school district thing. They get to decide the curriculum, not you. So that was weird. And then in later in the summer, he decided to get more specific, and he specifically laid out like the way he wanted the curriculums to change, curricula to change. And here's an example of what I mean. He laid out this memo, instructional support guidelines. It's a 5-page document, and I'll just show you one example of what he did. Look at this section on like the impact on American history. And he said, for example, teachers must highlight key historical moments where the Bible played a role, such as the Mayflower Compact, the Declaration of Independence, the speeches of Abe Lincoln and MLK. And again, like, just because certain things mention the Bible doesn't mean the Bible was necessarily relevant. Like, all of those things, minus MLK, all of those things occurred before anyone knew about evolution. It's not like we had religious diversity. Even the Constitution references the year of our Lord, but it doesn't reference the Bible. You know what I mean? So none of this made any sense. And he went on for pages. This was a weird one. Literary techniques. The Bible uses numerous and various literary techniques, including allegory, metaphor, and parable. That's true because it doesn't tell you the truth, it just uses stories. Anyway, teachers can use biblical texts to illustrate these techniques, enhancing students' literary analysis skills, which again, I promise you, English teachers across Oklahoma and elsewhere have other ways to teach this. They use a variety of texts to teach allegory and metaphor. You don't have to go to the Bible for it. And why would you go to the Bible in certain cases? It makes no sense. But anyway, this is what Ryan Walters was doing. He had all these ways of getting the Bible worked into the classroom. And he also said in interviews, this is an example of an interview he did with PBS, just to show you this bit right here. Here you go. Yeah, he said in an interview with PBS, if teachers don't want to teach it, they are compelled to teach it, or they can find another job. So basically threatening to fire anybody who didn't comply, which again, he doesn't have the power to do. But this is what Ryan Walters did. Now, in recent weeks, he has made headlines because he said his office is going to take $3 million and use it to just buy Bibles for everybody so they can make all this happen. But let me back up. School has started. The school year has started, and a whole bunch of superintendents are like, yeah, we're totally not doing any of what Ryan Walters wanted us to do. And these are superintendents of large school districts. They just said, yeah, we just ignored the memo. We don't care. He doesn't get to decide what our teachers do. And anyway, Ryan Walters is now like, well, I'm going to buy you a Bible and make you do this. He also said he's asking the state legislature for another $3 million. So I don't know why, because they can buy even more Bibles. You don't need $6 million to buy a Bible that is already free on the internet. Now, what I talked about for the past couple of weeks is how stupid this decision was to purchase all the Bibles. Because if you do the math and you say there are like 43,000 public school teachers in Oklahoma, not all of whom need the Bible by his own metrics, and you spend $3 million on those books, that comes out to like $70 a Bible. And if Ryan Walters got the full $6 million, it would be $140 that he's spending per Bible per teacher. Again, why would you spend at a minimum like $70 on a book for material that is already free online? Because he wanted certain translation of the Bible that is free online. It didn't make any sense. So a couple of weeks ago, he released the guidelines for book publishers. He said, if you are a book publisher and you're willing to supply us, not with 43,000 Bibles, because that's how many teachers there are, he said, let's make it 55,000. That's more Bibles than teachers now. I don't know. But he said, if you can give us 55,000 Bibles for the cheapest price, you'll get the contract. But in the rules that he laid out, he had a list of things that they had to do. So, for example, look at this list. You need to give us 55,000 Bibles within 2 weeks of when we sign the contract. And that's a really quick turnaround. You can't go from we don't have any books to we'll give you 55,000 of them in 2 weeks unless you already have the books printed and they're just sitting in a warehouse somewhere. Interesting. He also said you have to provide the KJV Bible for historical accuracy, which is not a thing that makes any sense. And then this is weird. He said the books they must include copies of the Pledge of Allegiance, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. Why those 4 things specifically? That's weird also, especially when you consider all those things are also free online. But he's like, they have to be included in the book. He said you can't have any study guides in there or narration or commentary. So no like teen Bibles that a publisher might have lying around. And then, weirdly, he said it has to be bound in leather or leather-like material. And when people looked at that list of what every book needed to have, they're like, there's only one book that fulfills all of those requirements. And everyone knows about it because Donald Trump is the dude who's been parading it everywhere. The Trump Bible had the KJV text and all those patriotic documents. Look at that. He even says, this Bible contains, yes, the lyrics to God Bless the USA, which no one was asking for, but then look at the next 4 things. It's exactly the things Ryan Walters was like, you have to have these in it. And by the way, the Trump Bible here that he's holding is bound in leather. So everyone was like, okay, so Ryan Walters just wants to spend taxpayer dollars on the Trump Bible. And then Ryan Walters got caught. And he's like, you guys, that's totally not what I was doing. But then reporters are like, well, what else could you possibly mean? As we talked about, this is Oklahoma Watch. They spoke to a salesperson at one of the largest Christian bookstores in the country. And they're like, you have a lot of Bibles. Do any of your Bibles fit Ryan Walters' requirements? And they said, we have 2,900 Bibles. None of them fit the parameters. So again, more proof that Ryan Walters was just trying to buy the Trump Bibles. So after he got caught, Walters and his office decided to change up the requirements. And I discussed this last week. He changed the rules a little bit. This is his revised plan. And look at what it says at 2.5 here. You do have to have those patriotic documents. However, look what it says in the last line. These can be bound together or separately. So they don't have to be in the book. Theoretically, you could print them out separately and just add a supplement to each book you're giving us. But again, so we went from you have to have these in the book to you just got to include them. But then, look at this last one, 2.7. He said the Bible has to be in leather or leather bound material. And then it said, oh, by the way, those additional patriotic documents, those also have to be bound in durable material, which means these publishers just got away from we have to include these things in the book, in the Bible, to we have to waste money making you a brand new book with like 5 pages in it to include this stuff and then ship that along with everything else? Like, there's no way any other publisher would qualify for this. So, if Ryan Walters was trying to get away from allegations that he just wanted to spend taxpayer money on the Trump Bible, his amended requirements basically said, no, it's still got to be the Trump Bible. I'm just going to make it look like we're not totally doing the Trump Bible, even though that's exactly what he was doing. So this is the shadiness he's been up to for the past several weeks. Now, as I'm making this live stream, it is Friday, October 18th. The deadline Ryan Walters put for publishers is Monday, October 21st. Now, who has applied for this? We don't know yet. It would be very interesting and totally predictable if the only people submitting a proposal to supply all these books are the people making the Trump Bibles. We will see. I also found this interesting that when Ryan Walters' office was confronted about all this is what his spokesperson told the Associated Press. Unfortunately, there have been false reports that have been repeated by numerous supposedly credible news organizations that the state's request for proposal was catered to one specific organization. Yeah, the Trump people. And look at what his spokesperson said, Krista Helfrey. What did she say? The changes, like, don't include the Constitution in the Bible. Those changes were made to the request to try to save taxpayer money. Our office worked with the State Department of Education to amend the solicitation to provide the listed resources at a much better value to Oklahomans. I don't know what any of that means, because if you wanted to save everyone money, you would take the $3 million Ryan Walters wants to spend on these books and say, hey, everybody in Oklahoma, here's 5 cents that we're just giving you. Happy birthday. And by the way, you can still access all the stuff you needed for free on the internet. That's how you save everybody money. I don't know what they were trying to do, but that's a stupid excuse for whatever it is they were trying to do. Okay. So that brings us to what's happening now, because Ryan Walters has been going through it, and everyone knows he's trying to spend $3 million on these Trump Bibles. And by the way, Trump gets a cut of every Bible that is sold of the Trump Bibles. I assume all of them are just sitting in a warehouse waiting to be purchased, and no one's really interested in them because they're expensive. They're like 60 some bucks each plus shipping. So what happened this week is that a coalition of church-state separation groups filed their lawsuit. This is from Americans United for Separation of Church and State. More than 30 Oklahomans, including parents and children, public school teachers, and faith leaders, filed this lawsuit urging the Oklahoma Supreme Court to block State Superintendent of Public Instruction Ryan Walters' mandate that all public schools incorporate the Bible into their curricula. They're going after the mandate that they have to teach it, which would effectively put a stop to purchasing these Bibles. There's a couple things I want to show you in this lawsuit that I really enjoyed. It's a 50-page lawsuit, so I'm not going to read all of it. But look at this. This is number 5 early on in the lawsuit. The mandate, the Bible mandate, interferes with the parents' ability to direct the religious and moral upbringing of their children. Yeah, parents should have the right to tell their kids what to worship, how to worship, all that stuff. That's a parent thing. You know who says that? Republicans, usually. And they're saying, don't get in our way by letting Ryan Walters force his religion on our families. Then they say the children themselves face coercive instruction on religion in their public schools that is contrary to their own beliefs. Yeah, what if you're Jewish or Muslim or atheist, and here you have your public school teacher telling you, we have to read from the Bible. There's no other way to learn the stuff that we've totally been fine teaching you about without the Bible for the past however many years. The teachers must present to their students religious doctrines to which the teachers and many students do not subscribe or face losing their teaching licenses. Yeah. And the spending of state funds to purchase Bibles diverts the tax payments of all the adult petitioners from proper uses to support a single religious tradition. Absolutely. Oklahoma's constitution says you can't spend public money to endorse, to promote one religion. You may recall that earlier this summer, Ryan Walters was part of a plan to launch a Catholic charter school in the state of Oklahoma, like a taxpayer funded public school that would still be Catholic run. And Ryan Walters helped make that a thing. And people sued. The Oklahoma Supreme Court shot it down and they said, look at the Constitution. It says you can't spend public money to promote religion, and that's totally what you're doing. So that charter school did not happen this year. We'll see what they do afterwards. But basically, the argument to the Oklahoma Supreme Court is, look, just follow the same rule here. He wants to use $3 million to promote Christianity. Don't let him get away with it. I think that's a solid argument. They also say later in the Bible, I was just amused by this. They never actually say Donald Trump's name anywhere in the lawsuit unless they're referencing a legal case somewhere. So the one time they do allude to Donald Trump is this part later in the lawsuit. Petitioners, the people suing, are aware of only two manufacturers that supply KJV Bibles that are bound in leather or leather-like material and contain all those patriotic documents. One, the supplier of the God Bless the USA Bible, also known as the Greenwood Bible, also known as the Trump Bible, which costs $59.99 and is officially endorsed by a prominent candidate for public office. That's a weird way to just not say Trump's name, but I like it. I also said, number two, there's the supplier of the We the People Bible, which costs $89.99. And by the way, that We the People Bible is also endorsed by Donald Trump. So they're basically saying, look, we're not going to drag him into this, but also we all know exactly what Ryan Walters is trying to do. Now, I will say that the lawsuit does get very specific. It says Walters violated the Oklahoma Administrative Procedures Act. Basically, if you're a state department and you're issuing new rules, which is what Ryan Walters did with his mandate, there has to be a provision of notice. You have to tell everyone this is the new rule we're going to implement, and you have to allow the public to weigh in on that rule before it goes into effect. The federal government does this all the time. You may have seen this week, there's a new rule that the Biden administration put into play that says if you can sign up for membership for something online, you have to be able to cancel that membership online. A company cannot make you jump over weird hurdles to cancel a membership when it was so easy to join in, right? Well, that's the sort of rule that they have to put out there early, allow the public to weigh in on, wait a period of time, and then it goes into effect after there's room for change. Ryan Walters didn't do any of that with the Bible mandate. One day he just said, by the way, this is how it is, and he just put it out there. The lawsuit also says superintendents have the authority under state law to select their own instructional materials. Ryan Walters doesn't get to dictate that. They also say Oklahoma's constitution prohibits state funding for the promotion of religion, like I mentioned. And the lawsuit said we need the courts to weigh in as soon as possible because the deadline for Ryan Walters' Bible project is on Monday. And they're really afraid that he's going to say, well, only one company applied, surprise, so we're going to sign the contract by Tuesday. They're really afraid he's going to do that. He's going to hand over the money, and then it'll be next to impossible to get it back. So they're asking the courts to weigh in on this as soon as possible before any money goes out the door. So, very interesting lawsuit. As I've pointed out in the past, Oklahoma, depending on whatever metric you want to choose, is ranked near the bottom of the list, maybe 49 in the country when it comes to education. They're not a good state when it comes to education. I think I just read an article today that said Oklahoma's ACT scores for high school students are probably the lowest in the country, or next to the lowest in the country. They come in at under 18 when the top score is 36. Oklahoma needs work on its education, and Ryan Walters has no interest in helping students, just wants to indoctrinate them. And for all the reasons Ryan Walters is bad at his job, and I have discussed that ad nauseum over the past several weeks, I do want to mention even Republicans hate this guy. Just a couple months ago, more than 24 Republican state officials asked the House Speaker in Oklahoma to conduct an investigation into Walters because they said, an investigation could lead to his impeachment. And they did it because this guy was breaking every rule. He wasn't allowing House subcommittees or Senate subcommittees to watch his hearings with the Board of Education. That's illegal. They had allocated money for school security. Ryan Walters was not spending it properly. They had allocated money to help schools purchase asthma inhalers. Ryan Walters was just sitting on that cash, even though kids' lives were at risk. And by the way, his office travel budget, he doesn't document properly all the places he's going to travel. He's basically using his budget, it seems, like a slush fund, and they wanted more oversight of that. So even Republicans don't like this guy, but not enough of them to actually get the investigation to happen. So this lawsuit may be the best way we have seen so far to stop Ryan Walters from shoving Christianity in everybody's face. Will it work? I don't know, but nothing else has worked. And the governor of Oklahoma is too chicken shit to do anything about it. And the voters of Oklahoma, the majority Republican voters, are not going to do enough about this. So it's going to take the courts to get in the way because nothing else is working. So I hope it works. We will see. I'm sure there'll be another update very soon. But I did appreciate that there was a lawsuit trying to stop Ryan Walters before he wastes everyone's money, taxpayer money, on Donald Trump Bibles. Okay, let's pause there for a second and take questions. Money laundering. That's the thing. Ryan Walters, as I've said, I think he wants to make a donation to the Trump campaign using taxpayer dollars, knowing that if you purchase Bibles, his Bible, he's going to get a cut of the cash. That's the only reason you do something like this. And it seems pretty obvious that's what he's trying to do, even though it's not, relatively speaking, a ton of money that would go into Trump's pocket. But my theory is that Ryan Walters just wants to get on Trump's good side so that if he wins the election, Ryan Walters could become the next Betsy DeVos and become the next Secretary of Education. So it's scary that he's just able to use taxpayer dollars to ingratiate himself with Trump. These stunts waste so much taxpayer money that could be better spent on the kids. Now, see, that's the sort of attitude that will prevent you from ever being the superintendent of public instruction in Oklahoma. How dare you think of the kids first? That's too woke or something, I've heard. Yeah, Oklahoma teachers are some of the worst paid in the US, yet this is what they're wasting money on. Yeah, the idea of putting Bibles in the classroom, this is not something teachers want. I promise you, if teachers made a list in Oklahoma of things they need for their classrooms, the Bible isn't on there anywhere. Wasn't Bible salesman another way to say con man back in the day? No, you're thinking of preacher. Sorry, had to correct you. Did you say there are religious groups involved in the lawsuit? Yes, there are. There are religious plaintiffs, like the parents involved in the lawsuit are religious. There are religious people involved. There are priests involved in the lawsuit. There are, like I said, over 32 plaintiffs represented in the case. And let me just show you this really quick. This is the first page of the lawsuit. And they're all going against Ryan Walters and his office. But you could see there's a lot of people involved in the very first name on the list, Reverend Dr. Lori Walk. But you could see on here, there are not just a lot of parents, but you see REV, you see Reverend all over this list of plaintiffs. And they are basically saying this guy does not represent me or my religion or whatever I'm trying to do with my religion. And they're opposed to this as well. And thank goodness for that.